My son begged me to co-sign his loan. 3 weeks later, he blocked my number. And the first person to tell me what was really happening with that money wasn't my son. It was his bank. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it took me longer than I'd like to admit to understand what it meant. A stranger at a call center in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, knew more about my own son's finances than I did. And she was the one who finally said the sentence that changed everything. "Sir, you need to see this before you do anything. My name is Walter Hendricks. Everyone calls me Walt. I'm 64 years old. I own a precision machining shop off East Trent Avenue in Spokane Valley, Washington, a business I built with my own 2 hands starting in 1989 in a rented garage bay with 1 lathe and a loan from my father-in-law that took me 6 years to pay back. I believed, for most of my life, that if you worked hard and you loved your family without conditions, that love would come back to you the same way. I was wrong about that. Not about the working hard part. About the rest of it. This is the story of the worst July of my life, and the one moment inside it I will remember until the day I die. Standing in a bank's back office in downtown Spokane, watching a woman slide a folder across a desk and say words that broke something open in me that I didn't know was still closed. But let me back up, because none of this makes sense unless you understand where we started. I married my wife Carol in 1988. 36 years this past May. We built a life on Sunrise Court in Liberty Lake, a quiet little town just east of Spokane, right on the Idaho border. 4-bedroom house, a detached garage I turned into a workshop, a backyard that backs up to a stand of ponderosa pines. Nothing fancy. Paid off in 2019, and I remember standing on that porch the night I mailed the last mortgage payment, thinking I'd finally arrived somewhere. We raised 2 kids in that house. My daughter Renee is 30. She's an ER nurse over at Sacred Heart Medical Center downtown, married to a good, quiet man named Kevin Doyle, who does HVAC work. Renee has never once in her adult life asked me for a dime. I want you to remember that, because it matters later. My son Bradley, we call him Brad, is 33. Smart. Charming in a way that used to make me proud, and now, looking back, makes me nervous. Brad bounced around for years. Worked in restaurants since he was 19. Worked his way up from busser to line cook to sous chef at a decent steakhouse downtown. And for a long time I thought that was just Brad finding his footing. Every father tells himself some version of that story. Then, in early March of this year, Brad called me on a Tuesday night and asked if he and Carol and I could sit down. "Family dinner," he said. "Nothing serious." I should have known right then. Nothing serious is never nothing serious. He showed up at the house with a laptop bag and a business partner I'd met exactly twice before, a man named Colton Vance. Colton was maybe 38, expensive watch, the kind of handshake that lasts half a second too long, always smiling like he already knew how the conversation was going to end. He and Brad had worked together at the steakhouse for 2 years, and somewhere in there they decided they were going to open their own place. Ridgeline Kitchen, they were calling it. A farm-to-table spot on West Main Avenue in downtown Spokane, exposed brick, an open kitchen, the whole concept laid out on a slide deck Brad had clearly spent weeks building. I'll be honest with you. I was moved. My son, sitting at my kitchen table at 33 years old, finally talking about something with fire in his voice instead of just getting by. Carol squeezed my hand under the table. She saw it too. The number they needed was $340,000. SBA loan through Cascade Trust Bank, the branch on Riverside Avenue. They had about 60 of that from savings and a small investor, but the bank wanted a personal guarantor with strong credit and real collateral before they'd release the rest. Brad's credit wasn't there yet. Colton's, it turned out later, wasn't either, though nobody said that part out loud at my kitchen table. "Dad," Brad said, and I remember exactly how he said it, quiet, careful, like he'd rehearsed it in the car. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe in this with everything I have. I just need your name on the guarantee. That's it. You're not writing a check. You're just believing in me on paper." Carol was quiet on the drive to bed that night, and I knew that quiet. 36 years teaches you to read a silence like a weather report. "Walt," she finally said, sitting on the edge of the bed, unclipping her earrings. "I want to believe in him too. I do. But something about that Colton fella, I don't know. He looks at you like he's already spent your money in his head." I told her she was being protective. I told her Brad had worked in restaurants his whole adult life and finally had a real shot. And what kind of father was I going to be if I let my own hesitation be the reason he never got it? I told myself that love without risk isn't really love at all. I signed the personal guarantee on April 3rd at a conference table on the second floor of the Cascade Trust branch downtown, across from a loan officer named Diane Reyes. Professional woman, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of handshake that actually means something. She walked me through every page slowly, made sure I understood that as personal guarantor, if the business defaulted, the bank could come after my personal assets, my house, my shop, everything, to satisfy the debt. I nodded along like a man who fully understood what he was agreeing to. I did not fully understand what I was agreeing to. I want to be honest with you about that, because people ask. I didn't know it yet, but the next time I sat in that building, it would not be to sign anything. It would be to hear a sentence that would end one version of my life and start another. The first 2 months were good, genuinely good. Construction crews in and out of the West Main Avenue space, framed permits taped in the front window, Brad texting me photos of the concrete floors getting polished, the walk-in cooler getting installed. He'd call me most Sunday evenings, walk me through the budget, ask my opinion on equipment purchases because he knew I understood machinery and I understood money. For 8 weeks, I felt like the father I'd always wanted to be. Present, trusted, needed in the right way instead of the wrong way. Then, sometime in late June, the call slowed down. I noticed it the way you notice a clock that stopped ticking, not all at once, but in the sudden quiet where a sound used to be. A Sunday went by with no call. Then another. I texted him. Short replies. Busy week, Dad. Talk soon. The kind of message you send when you're managing someone, not talking to them. On July 9th, I got a piece of mail at my house I wasn't expecting. A notice from Cascade Trust addressed to me as guarantor, informing me that the business account associated with the loan had missed its scheduled draw reconciliation and that a payment cycle review was underway. I didn't fully understand the language, but I understood the tone. Something was wrong. I called Brad that night. Straight to voicemail. I called again the next morning. Voicemail again. By July 12th, I'd called him 9 times over 4 days, and every single one went straight to that same flat automated voice telling me to leave a message after the tone. Then on July 14th, a Sunday, I called one more time, and instead of ringing through to voicemail like it always had, it went straight to a single tone and disconnected. That specific sound, the sound of a number that's been blocked. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone, staring at the screen like it might change its answer if I looked at it long enough. 33 years, and my son had never once hung up on me, let alone blocked me. I called Carol into the kitchen and showed her the screen and watched her face do something I'd never seen it do before, go from confused to frightened in about 4 seconds flat. That's when I called my oldest friend, Frank Delgado. Frank and I have known each other since 1991, back when he ran a diesel repair shop 2 units down from mine on Trent Avenue. Frank's the kind of man who tells you the truth even when you'd rather he didn't, which is exactly why I called him instead of just sitting with it alone. Walt, he said, after I laid the whole thing out over coffee at the Denny's on Sprague Avenue, the one we've been going to for 20 years. Walt, listen to me. When a grown man blocks his father's number 3 months after that father co-signs a loan for him, that is not a coincidence, and you know it isn't. I don't want to believe that, Frank. I know you don't. Frank stirred his coffee slow, the way he does when he's about to say something he knows I don't want to hear. But you didn't drive out to that restaurant yet, did you? I hadn't. So the next morning, a Tuesday, I got in my truck before the shop opened and I drove downtown to West Main Avenue myself. I want you to picture what I expected to see. Awnings up, string lights, a soft opening banner in the window, maybe a line of people waiting for a Tuesday lunch service, because Brad had told me 2 weeks earlier they were 3 weeks from opening. What I actually found was a storefront with brown paper still taped over half the windows, a padlock on the front door that hadn't been there in June, a dumpster out front overflowing with drywall scraps that looked like they'd been sitting for weeks, not days. No lights on inside, no sound. No sign of a single living soul. I stood on that sidewalk on West Main Avenue for a long time, hands in my jacket pockets, feeling something cold settle into my chest that had nothing to do with the Spokane morning air. I didn't know it yet, standing there, but the answers I was looking for were not going to come from my son. They were going to come from the one place I never expected. A phone call from a stranger who worked for the same bank I'd signed my name to 3 months earlier. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. If you're just joining me, grab your coffee, get comfortable, because this story is about to take a turn you will not see coming. If you've been with me a while, you already know what I'm about to say. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's the time, because what happened 3 days after I stood outside that empty restaurant changed the entire direction of this family. The call came on July 22nd, a Thursday, at 11:40 in the morning. I was at my shop, standing over a CNC mill running a batch of aluminum housings for a client out of Post Falls, when my cell phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Spokane area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. I'm glad I didn't. Mr. Hendricks, the voice said. My name is Diane Reyes. I'm a senior loan officer with Cascade Trust Bank. We spoke back in April when you signed as personal guarantor on the Ridgeline Kitchen SBA loan. I remember you, I said, and my whole body went still in a way machinery around me couldn't touch. Mr. Hendricks, she said, and there was something careful in her voice, the tone of someone who's had this exact conversation before and knows exactly how much weight it carries. I need you to come into the branch this afternoon if you're able. There are some things related to this loan that, as guarantor, you need to see in person before you make any decisions on your own. I asked her right there, standing next to a running mill with metal shavings curling onto the floor, whether my son was in some kind of trouble. She paused, long enough that I heard it. Mr. Hendricks, I'd rather walk you through the documentation in person. I don't want to alarm you over the phone with half the picture. I was in my truck 11 minutes later. I sat in that same second-floor conference room at the Riverside Avenue branch where I'd signed my name in April, except this time Diane Reyes wasn't alone. There was a man from the bank's fraud and risk department sitting beside her, younger, quieter, a folder in front of him thick enough that I felt my stomach drop just looking at it. Mr. Hendricks, Diane said, sliding the folder toward me. I'm going to walk you through this slowly, and I want you to ask me to stop at any point if you need to. Here is what that folder told me, laid out in bank statements, draw request forms, and vendor invoices that I read 3 times each because I genuinely did not want them to be true. The $340,000 loan had been structured to release in construction draws, tied to milestones, a common SBA setup. Permits, framing, equipment, build-out, opening inventory. Each draw required documentation, invoices from licensed vendors, signed off by both business partners.